Compared to other texts we've been reading recently, John Keats's Lamia is, in some ways, relatively straightforward. He had the decency to write the entire work over the space of a few months in the year 1819, and he didn't change much of it. If, when you read of it, you find yourself thinking of Christabel, you won't be surprised to learn that a chance encounter with Samuel Taylor Coleridge reignited Keats's creativity that year. Textual influences on the poem and its real-life inspirations are also fairly straightforward to establish. That year, Keats was obsessed with making a career as an author. He was also both absorbed by and terrified of the experience of romantic love. One book Keats read closely answered both of those purposes. Robert Burton's work, The Anatomy of Melancholy, is a compendium of literary evidence for causes of melancholy, which I'm going to say loosely corresponds to what we now know as depression. Burton devotes considerable attention to a category called Love-Meancholy, consisting of tales which suggest that romantic love causes bodily and mental disorder. Burton's point is to tell us that love is, quote, a poison, a torture, and hell. The Spanish Inquisition is not comparable to it. Among these tales in Burton's account of Love-Meancholy is the story of Lycius and the Lamia. This tale was associated with a real person, a philosopher named Apollonius of Tyana. But for his own purposes, John Keats reimagines the tale in a mythical Greek setting, replete with gods and nymphs and satyrs. To say something briefly on poetic form, Lamia is the only one of Keats's major or mature works to occur in rhyming couplets. He's probably thinking of John Dryden's translations of Ovid's Metamorphoses, which, like Keats's Lamia, are concerned with physical transformation. And there's an interesting dialogue between the fact that so much in Keats's poem is in flux, or is fluid or unstable, and the fact that the verse form is so rigid throughout. Making more of this mythical Greek setting, Keats adds his own introductory tale, which is about the god Hermes. Hermes has become obsessed with reports of a beautiful nymph, and these reports so move him that he feels compelled to seek her out and claim her. This little introductory tale establishes central themes of the poem, such as lust, transformation, and possessive love, and also brings to our mind the pervasive question in the poem of whether what is imagined can be made a thing of this world.
It was no dream. Or say a dream it was. Real are the dreams of gods, and smoothly pass their pleasures in a long, immortal dream.
We're told that Hermes can, literally, realize his love because he's a god. The main action of the poem will investigate whether Lycius and Lamia can sustain their own respective ideas of love, whether ideals can survive in the mortal world. Lycius, a student of Platonic philosophy, is obsessed with ideals, and sometimes the ideals he pursues are incompatible, and sometimes the ideals he pursues are, in themselves, simply doomed. The action of the main tale centers on a triangle of three characters. Lycius is the young man who meets a beautiful and mysterious woman with whom he falls instantly and madly in love. Lamia is the enchantress in the poem, somewhat influenced by the treatment of Geraldine in Coleridge's Christabel. Lamia is not a name for the character, but Lamia is the name for a type of vampire. And Lamia is unlike other femme fatale we will encounter this semester. Unlike Coleridge's Geraldine, for example, we know precisely what Lamia is up to in Keats's poem. She is a serpent who takes on human form to capture a young man with whom she is obsessed. The third main character is Lycius' mentor, the philosopher Apollonius. He spots the danger Lycius is in. Lamia is terrified of Apollonius, with good reason, as we'll see. So Lycius is caught between two conflicting influences. On one hand, Apollonius, who represents philosophy, truth, the life of the mind, and on the other hand, Lamia, who stands for romantic obsession, bodily pleasures, and the lure of the imaginary. Overall, this arrangement of characters can be read allegorically. Lycius is a kind of everyman figure he could stand for anyone, and he experiences the contrary attractions of beauty or the imagination, as in Lamia, and truth or philosophy or science, as represented in Apollonius. As Keats had given up the study of medicine in favour of poetry, it's not hard to see a real-life application for him in this classic dilemma. Keats's Lamia is ambiguous in a way that differs from the irresolute nature of Coleridge's narrative poems, but in its own way is fertile for discussing the poem by facilitating so many different possible perspectives on it. What I mean is, one aspect of Lamia that is so interesting is that the positions of each character are, to an extent, equally valid. I think we could all sympathise, in a way, with the dilemma facing Lycius. We can understand Lamia's motivations, while simultaneously thinking that she is cruel. But we could say exactly the same thing about Apollonius for different reasons.